Do you want to know how to teach a child with autism not to hit? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education. And in this video, we are talking about hitting. In this video, we're going to be talking about why autistic people hit and what we can do to help a child who has autism choose not to hit. For many years, I did therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens. They were all between the ages of 12 and 18. Many of those teens had autism, and I've worked with a lot of families who have autistic kids as well. In fact, just this last weekend, I was with a family in Texas who had many autistic children that they've taken in or adopted, as well as having their own biological children. Now, with autism comes a lot of different things, but one of those things can be hitting. So why is it that they choose to hit? So there are multiple reasons why autistic people might choose to hit. One reason is anger. That's actually a pretty normal reason for a lot of people why they choose to hit. So they get some anxiety, it's building up, they're getting angry or frustrated about something, and they end up hitting because of the anger or because of the increased levels of anxiety and frustration. This is almost a chemical reason, really, for them to be choosing to hit somebody else or to hit objects, which can also happen. So another reason that autistic people may choose to hit is because they want to gain access to something. So they want food, or they want a certain item, or they want someone to give them back an item. And so instead of using their words, which when they're in the wrong part of their brain can seem like a big labor to recall the words that they might need to talk about an issue, they just start grabbing, hitting, and getting physical to try to get the message along to other people. So in general, hitting is used as a way of communication. It's a way that people try to communicate their desires or feelings to other people. Autistic people aren't any different in that regard. The one thing that can be different is their levels of anxiety or their sensory exposure can be more increased. So sometimes an autistic person will choose to hit because they're feeling sensory overload at the time. So they've got so much input coming in, they don't know how to handle it, and their body starts to react negatively to it. So it's very common to see an autistic person start to shake their hands around, wave their head, or maybe even start to pace because they don't know what to do to handle the circumstance that they find themselves in. They just have too much stimuli and they're not able to process it quick enough. There is another reason that autistic people choose to hit, and that is for an avoidance tactic. Meaning that when you're talking to them about something or trying to get them to do something, maybe follow an instruction, they just start hitting at you to change the topic to hitting instead of to what you're telling them they need to do or what you're telling them that they should not do. Now, this is very much like a toddler would do. When toddlers are told not to do something, they start lashing out more, having tantrums, maybe even hitting, so that the person has to worry about self-defense or talking about the hitting instead of talking about the original issue. If they can get you far enough down the road talking about behavioral issues or actions that are inappropriate, then soon you might forget to talk to them about their after dinner chore or sharing with their sibling or something like that. So really, it's just a manipulation tactic. A lot of people use hitting to avoid negative confrontations or corrections. This is not something that is unique to autistic people. However, it is commonly observed when with an autistic person. So we really need to talk about how to help autistic people choose not to hit. You're right, it is a choice. This whole channel is the Teaching Self-Government channel, and if you've already subscribed to this channel, then you know that here I talk about a lot of skills and principles of self-government, which all revolve around choice. Even an autistic person can make choices for themselves related to their behavior. And I know because I have put this to the test many, many times. So I have 4 children of my own that are all neurotypical children. However, I've taken in many children over the years who were neurodiverse. These neurodiverse foster children that came to live with our family for a time were not just autistic children, but sometimes there were other things that they were dealing with. So we had children who had ADHD, autism, ODD, RAD, DID, FAS, kleptomania, compulsive lying. There were many things that were going on that would relate to their sensory overload. Oftentimes we were talking to them about how they would express themselves physically, how they would get their message across to us. And a lot of the success hinged on what we were going to self-govern about ourselves, but then of course some of it hinged on what they would self-govern about themselves. So let's talk about how parents and children can self-govern themselves that can make a difference to help an autistic person choose not to hit. When you are parenting with a self-government approach or through the lens of self-government, it's important to understand what self-government is. When a person is self-governed, that means that they understand the cause and effect of any given situation and possess a knowledge of their own behaviors so that they can control them. If a parent is going to help a child learn self-government, don't you think that it makes sense that the parent is self-governing too? In fact, it's hard to teach something to your children that you're not working on yourself. Now, you heard me right, I said working on. That doesn't mean that you have to be perfect at self-government, because self-government for most of us is a lifetime pursuit. It's a principle that we follow so that we apply the appropriate skills to our behaviors, our thoughts, the way that we interpret the things around us so that we can have the greatest outcomes. So what does the parent need to self-govern about themselves to help an autistic child choose not to hit? Well, first, the parent or the adult working with the autistic child needs to make sure that they are staying calm and that they are not taking things personally. So working with a person who's neurodiverse and processes differently can sometimes be frustrating because we wish that they could see things the same way that we see things, or that their anxiety levels and their processing were things that we could more relate to because it seemed more like the way that we process. So automatically a parent or adult working with an autistic child or person needs to make sure that they understand that that other person is not going to see things the same way that they do. And they need to have patience about this. So I have a lot of videos here on this channel about accepting no answers and criticism. That is one of the 4 basic skills of self-government. We're going to be talking about that related to the children too. But parents or adults absolutely have to still accept no answers, meaning that when your child does not behave the way that you wish that they would, you need to be able to say, okay, that's what they chose to do. You need to be able to mentally drop the subject about that, meaning you don't take it personally, so that you can move on to do some good training with that child. Now, also, corrections are going to be important. Everybody needs feedback, whether they are autistic or not. They need to know when they've done good and when they should repeat a certain behavior in the future, and when they've made a choice that might not help them achieve the things that they want to, and how they can correct those things. So knowing how to do an appropriate correction is also something that's going to be very beneficial for the parent. There are 7 steps to doing a proper self-governed correction. Those are steps that I talk about in my video, The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success. So you can definitely go to that video, but I'm not going to touch on those particular steps now because I really want to get into what we need to teach the children if they happen to be hitting. So when you're hitting a person, you're violating a boundary issue. That means you're crossing over a line that you shouldn't cross. Just because a person is autistic doesn't mean they shouldn't learn about their boundaries. They absolutely should. Even young children who are autistic can learn their boundaries. They can learn the other side of this boundary is a no answer. And so I need to make sure that I do not cross this line. So how do I accept a boundary issue? I do that by using the skill accepting a no answer. So when you accept a no answer, you know how to look at a situation or a person, you know how to examine yourself and what's going on, you can stay calm in the circumstance, and you can hold yourself back by dropping the subject about that circumstance. You can tell yourself in your brain that it's okay, that whatever is happening is actually okay, and I can get through this. Now, I might have to also have some thoughts prepared in mind for when things don't go my way so that I can convince myself that it's okay. I might have to tell myself, that's just a no answer. I can drop the subject, which is one of the 4 skills to accepting a no answer. So there are 4 basic skills to self-government. These children's books each teach one of the 4 basic skills, which take care of 99% of all behavioral problems, even for autistic people. This book here, Porter Earns a Quarter, teaches the skill accepting no answers and criticism, which actually the same skill set applies to both of those things. There are 4 steps to that. And when the person learns that 4-step process, then they can take care of themselves in a circumstance better. When a person has an impulse to hit another person, step number 1 is they have to recognize that they have the impulse. What is the feeling that they have in their body when they think they should hit another person? Or what is the thought that comes into their head when they think they should hit another person? It might be a thought as simple as, they don't understand, or I don't know what to say, or something like that. So help them identify if they just had a moment where they just hit, pause and say, hold on, let's identify what just went through your head right then, so that we can recognize it later and not choose to hit. Then you can pause, they can think about what they maybe were considering at the time or what thought ran through their head. Because before we take action, there is this microsecond where we have a thought. That thought allows us to either take the action or it stops us from taking an action and puts us toward taking another action. So it usually is a thinking error that leads the person to following an impulse to hit. And it's probably because they don't know another way to communicate. So remember those children's books? Well, those children's books also teach the skill disagreeing appropriately. If a person is hitting because they're angry because they have to do something, or because they can't do something they want to do, or something like that, then that person probably needs the skill disagreeing appropriately so that they know how to communicate with you. Sometimes if a person is using hitting for a distraction technique, then you also know that they just need to have a skill to help them actually solve their problem so that they don't have to distract. So there are 7 steps to disagreeing appropriately, and those are steps that are also talked about in other videos here on this channel. In fact, that video that I referred to before, the Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success, which talks about a lot of the skills and principles of self-government, is probably going to be a great video for you to start with. So what about the person who is hitting because of sensory overload? Their thoughts are going to be different. And the reason that they're hitting is really more out of just sensory habit. So you have to help them identify what their body does. And if they can, again, back to that thought of I can't think or I don't know, whatever it is, so that they can analyze that and they can say, wait, stop, pause. When a person is having sensory overload, pausing, taking a breath can get the chemicals in the brain centered so that they can start thinking clearly again. Also, they can learn to follow instructions from you and to follow certain cue phrases that you might learn or give them when you're giving instructions. So one of those such cue phrases is, I need you to. When I am instructing a person who has sensory issue and that's the reason why they're hitting or acting out or saying explosive words that they shouldn't, then I'm going to teach them how to respond to the phrase, I need you to do something. And I'm going to use another one of those 4 basic skills of self-government, which is the skill following instructions. We could go on at length about how to help your autistic child with their hitting as well as other things. But hopefully this was a great start to you. And hopefully you're seeing how this channel and the self-government skills that are taught on this channel are really going to help you. Definitely go next to the video, The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success, so that you can start learning the skills that you and your child need so that you both can be more self-governed. Click on the link to that video now. I'll see you there.